how some of us, from a very young age, found ourselves cast in a role that we never signed up for. A situation basically where, in order to survive, it was required that we become the sort of psychic and emotional anchor for an adult in our lives who was untethered, fragmented, overwhelmed, or just for whatever reason unable to metabolize, to take care of their own experience. Instead of being mirrored and held in our own aliveness, and really to have that basic goodness and dignity reflected back to us, which is what we need for our little brains and nervous systems and our little hearts to grow. Instead of that, we were drawn into what we call an enactment. And what that is really a drawn into really having to psychically orbit, spin around another person's pain, around their anxiety, their narcissism, or their own unresolved trauma, to orbit around the reality of their unlived life. But of course, we weren't meant to become therapists at age 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We weren't meant to stabilize a caregiver's fragile nervous system, or to modulate their rage, their loneliness, their despair, or to repair their fragile, fragmented, broken apart sense of self. What we needed was quite simple, really, and sacred, to be seen, to be allowed to exist as we were, to be welcomed into the relational field without condition, without a role to play, without having to deserve feeling felt and understood by accomplishing some sort of task, by taking care of a broken, fragmented, fragile self in one of our caregivers. To be welcomed not for what we could offer, what we could soothe, what we could remedy, what we could fix or cure, but simply for who we were, and all of our mystery and becoming and uniqueness, with our unique sensitivities, vulnerabilities, and eccentricities. And so when that core need goes unmet, something in the psyche shatters. Not and reorganizes. It has to reorganize around that, make sense of that, find meaning in that, and adapt to that. Not as the expression of some sort of lack of evolution or pathology or anything like that. It's not a mistake. It's not something gone wrong, that shattering and reorganization, but it's actually the expression of a certain kind of intelligence. The soul, just to use that language, in its ingenuity, crafts a strategy for our survival. And what happens is that we become really attuned. Too attuned, we might say, hyper attuned. We scan the environment. We learn to scan the environment, to come out of our center, to come out of that playful, creative, expansive, awesome, joyful center that we're supposed to dwell in as a young child. We have to come out of that, and we're scanning the environment for signs of trouble. It's no surprise that they call it a nervous system. But we learn to listen, for those very subtle cues in mom and dad and whoever else was around. A slight tremor or change in prosody or in the voice, the silence at the dinner table, the storm building, behind someone's eyes, the smell of the alcohol, the raising of the voice, the stomping of the feet, whatever it was. We learned because our safety, our survival depended on it. And here's the thing, many of us learned in this we learned to equate attunement with vigilance. We learn to equate love with self-abandonment. We learn to equate, it's another one. We learn to equate connection with collapse. And we left ourselves. And you notice how I'm using the past tense, left, And of course, these strategies had their origin in our early histories and our families of origin. So we can use the past tense in that sense. But I think, as we all know, and what I'm inviting us to experience here and to open up into, is this is not about the past. Actually, none of this work that we're doing is really about the past. We're not going into the past and changing something and reestablishing those neural circuitries, those linkages. We're not going back into the past so we can relive a holding environment that we didn't get to have, that we might, of course, really give ourselves permissions to grieve for. This work is not about the past. We speak of it at times as if it were, and we use images and we use language of the past when we say that we left ourselves. And that's fine. But we might start to substitute also words of the present. In some moments now, as an adult, I will leave myself in order to fulfill this strategy of adaptation and protection. At times, as an adult, I will equate attunement with love. I will equate love with self-abandonment or connection with collapse. Not because we were or are weak or broken or something's wrong with us or we're not okay or we're not spiritual or we failed or we're unevolved, any of that. It's because of we're wired to survive. We're crafted to make it through to the next moment. We're crafted to not fall into fragmented states of consciousness because it was safer. It was safer in that moment when these strategies were developing, when this circuitry was becoming encoded. It was safer to care for the other, to go along with their reality, to shut down parts of myself and my own embodied vulnerability, sensitivity, intelligence, wisdom, desire, passion. It was safer to shut that down than to risk the terror of being unseen and to risk the terror of a lot worse than that for many of us.